So I'm going to start. I've been thinking a lot about what poets imagined in the past, and I've wanted to go as far back into the past as I can go. So I'm going to read a poem that's 900 years old, and part of what I love about it is that it really feels like it could have been written 5 days ago. My friends Jake and Alex read this poem to me when we were living in Iowa City, and I've never forgotten it. So it's by someone named William the Ninth. He was a nobleman. He was, in fact, the Count of Poitou and the Duke of Aquitaine. And this is from an anthology of troubadour lyric poetry translated by someone named Alan Press. It was originally written in medieval Provençal. So I'll start with that and then I'll read my own. I'll make a poem out of sheer nothingness. It will not be about me or about any other. It will not be of love or of youth or of anything else. It was rather composed while sleeping on a horse. I know not in what way I was born. I am neither gay nor downhearted, neither a stranger nor a familiar friend, nor can I do anything else, for thus was I charmed by night on a high hill. I know not when I sleep or when I wake, unless someone tells me so, but very little has my heart not broken with a deep sorrow, and I care not a mouse for that, by St. Martial. Sick I am, and fear to die, and know nothing but what I hear tell of it. I shall seek a doctor of my way of thinking, but I know not such a one. He'll be a good doctor if he can cure me, but never if I grow worse. I have loved one, I don't know who she is, for I've never seen her, so help me my faith. She has done nothing to please me or to grieve me, nor am I bothered by it, for I never had Norman or Frenchman in my house. I've never seen her, yet I love her dearly. I've never had right from her, nor has she done me wrong. But when I do not see her, I get along quite well, actually. I don't think it's worth a rooster, for I know one more noble and more lovely, and who is worth more. But I have made this poem, I know not of what, and I'll send it to him who will send it on for me by another yonder toward Anjou, that he might send back to me from his own wallet the key to it. So that was William the Ninth. And I love much about that poem, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it later, but one thing I love is that these translations were done in prose. And the poem is written in a very dense, extremely intricate, from what I can tell, meter and rhyme scheme that's basically impossible to render in English. So when I read the poem in English, I'm always looking at the Occitan on the other page and feeling that there's something that's just exceeding me somehow. And I love that so much. And I wish so desperately that I could enter into the world in which that poem was composed so intricately, but I can't quite do it. And there's something really magical about that to me. Okay, now I'm going to read a piece of mine. And I think one reason why I wanted to read some prose is that I've also been interested in poems that are written in prose, which has been what I've been doing now for some time. And this is a poem that's sort of in the shape of a story, and it's a part of a much longer piece that I've been imagining as a book called Faust. This part takes place at a writers' conference, and there's really not much by way of plot that you need to know other than that the name of the teacher is George, and that I'm in the class. So it doesn't have a title, but it's about me and it's about George. I'm just going to drink some water before I begin. George walked into the classroom. He laid 2 Rite Aid bags of party bottles of Sprite, Oreos, wads of paper towel, and what seemed to be loose dental floss on the table, from which they fell. And he told us, after nodding at a student, Eugene, who'd picked it all up and was arraying it in terror in front of him, that he was, quote, flying on morphine, and a drug the name of which he had missed, and OxyContin, making an ooh-woo motion with his arms to show that he knew about but was not fazed by the dangers of that last. An appendectomy, he yelled. Cure for an ailment he wasn't sure he'd had. A cracked old hillbilly, his words, with catastrophe-only insurance. But the doctors insisted that some or another anterior inside of his had developed an outside and failed. And Green was, he admitted, in terrible pain, toggling between persistent and urgent. So he had gone along with it. An appendectomy, he said again, but with complications. They, the complications, or it, the timing of them, made him smile. His girlfriend, a lecturer of Spanish at NYU from England, had asked him, and it was hard to do it, to get out, just for a few days. Even though, of course, he was still recuperating on the sofa in their apartment in the East Village, but his illness or the rebound from it, which was somehow inhibited by being taken care of, and his domestic behaviors, which were already a lot, and which distress had amplified, overwhelmed the tiny bedroom and the little kitchen they had that was their study. Didn't he like that job teaching blank verse in Pennsylvania? Not only a job, really, but a reunion with his old pals. And so he couldn't he call them back and tell them he could actually go and get on the train right now? I got on the train, he said to us, dropping into an old office chair and drifting back to the whiteboard before yanking 30 pounds of ancient photocopies in massive typeface out of another pharmacy bag and passing them around. Wordsworth, Green began, had succeeded in two things. He'd told a beautiful story without a plot, and he'd versified Augustinian prose. Nothing he continued to sneeze at. And when he sneezed after saying this, he looked more serious than before, as if he had made the opposite of a joke. But Wordsworth, God knew, he said, could really ham it up. He could pad out an image with, quote, wan effusion. Tennyson was right to immortalize the phrase, a Mr. Wilkinson, a clergyman, as an example of Wordsworth's perfect writing that was bad, so drab as poetry that it was prosier than prose. A woman in the back raised her hand to ask about the difference between the two, poetry and prose, since no one, she said, had explained it to her in a way that made it stick. And here we were in a blank verse workshop. I don't have any blank verse or any poems at all, said another man, with a long beard of the faintest fluorescent yellow. I'm here with Lynn because I'm engaged to her mom. Lynn, a third person said, pointing at the asker of the question, is right. We were given no guidance beforehand. Now we're completely over a barrel. Green replied that it was okay that everyone was upset. He was upset too. Dr. Johnson thought blank verse must be tumid and gorgeous. Otherwise, it's just bad prose. Anyway, he said, we want to write like birds. Now, let's go to poem 12 in the packet, My Ox Duke by John Dyer. Would someone like to read it? I raised my hand and Green just stared at me, meaning, please read the poem. And as I opened my mouth, he said that this lyric, which was about a beast, reminded him of a subject of his recent fascination, which were the emblem books of the early modern period, in which editors paired a crude image with a pictogram, a symbolic countertext to the image, and both of these with an explanation, the relation of which to the previous being, Green announced, a delicious and ongoing mystery. Begin. 'Twas on a summer noon in Stainsford's mead, new mown and tedded, while the weary swains louting beneath an oak their toils relieved, and some with wanton tale the nymphs beguiled, and some with song, and some with kisses rude. Their scythes hung o'er their heads. When my brown ox, old laborer Duke, in awkward haste I saw stumbling through the field to reach the shade of an old open barn, whose gloomy floor the last of sounding flails had long forgot. This was the poem. Between him and his ease, the ox Duke's, he finds little piglets. And instead of trampling on them, the poet continues, the big old ox Duke is kind to them. The poet says that he soft touches them. And the boys in the background keep doing nothing. They shirk their chores. While the ox's apple red simplicity, the poet likens to that of God. God soft touches all creatures, the gruntlings and the slitherers too. He breathes them o'er, the pigs, but they never know that he has cared for them, and the day is saved. Now Duke was in the barn, past the burning sun, and Green roused wetly. That, he huffed, was something. And in doing this, he startled again the young man Eugene from Iowa, who had joined our workshop on the recommendation of a teacher whom he expected any minute, but who would never arrive. Thank you very much. I can see, I think I might have frozen briefly. Can you hear me, sir? Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
There we are.
Yeah, I would love to answer questions if people have them, or like Sarah and I can chat.
What's the best way to do that? Maybe people can write their questions in the chat.
Yeah, I guess, right. Maybe that is a good way. And maybe, Sarah, I'll start by asking you a question. That's also a question for myself.
Yeah. Wait, can I just say that was so good?
I felt the same about your poems.
You had me at wadded paper towels, you know?
I see a decline.
Yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. So, right, Sarah, I was thinking, Sarah, just like, I guess I've read your poems over like some time now, and I wonder if you feel like your writing has changed at all? And like, is it a change in your process, or is it a change in the, I don't know, in the life around you? Or like, how do you feel like your writing changes as your life changes?
That's a good question. I mean, I think from my perspective, that it's hard to perceive what or what that change might be. My impulse is to just write about, and I think kind of always has been, to just kind of write about the most like loaded moments, or like the most embarrassing things, or the thing I regret the most, or just like the most intense thing, as a way of maybe diffusing it for myself, but also like investigating that experience with the assumption that probably other people are having those similar